This attacker walked on two legs and wasn't that much bigger than Thorn himself. Impressions noted in passing as Thorn thrust out a leg to act as pivot and brace and recovered his feet. He hadn't emerged unscathed. The other had taken a slash at him as he leaped over Thorn's tumbling body, leaving a burning trickle of dampness along the length of the no one's back, where the tip of the blade had cut him. It was a face Thorn knew, and the recognition of it almost got him killed a second time.
Wait, he got killed a first time?
Maybe?
This is I Don't Even Own a Television, Shadow Moon.
There are books that are good, there are books that are bad. There's some books so fucking awful you wish you never had read them at all, 'cause a novel can ruin your life. Hey buddy, I don't even own a television.
All right, welcome to I Don't Even Own a Television. It's a podcast about bad books. I am J.W. Friedman.
I'm Chris Collision, and we have a special guest.
We do, from Philadelphia, the one, the only Tricia Ellis. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Thanks for coming on the show with us, Tricia. Unfortunately, we have to talk about a horrible, horrible book. It is called Shadow Moon, written by Chris Claremont and George Lucas.
And Chris Claremont's thesaurus, I think, deserves a lot of credit for writing this.
Yeah. It should be noted, before we get too far into this, everyone involved in this podcast is aware of the fact that Chris Claremont writes comic books. I'm not going to let that be an excuse.
Exactly. I am both intimately acquainted with Chris Claremont and the kind of former fan that you can only be when you were 12 and something kind of blew your mind, and then you came back to it and realized that even at 12 you were wrong.
So we need to say what this book is, I guess, even before we do plot in 60 seconds. And what this book is a continuation of the Willow storyline. The events of it occur 13 years after the major motion picture Willow.
You may remember the major motion picture Willow as the one you were kind of stoked about because it was like 1987 or 88 or whatever, and you were like, hey, that dude from Real Genius is in it, and hey, the dude who made Star Wars made it. And then you went and saw it and were like, this is an annoying, slapsticky pile of crap.
Kevin Pollak is in that movie as well.
And Rick Overton, which I made sure to cast them anytime the brownies in this book went on long Shakespearean speeches, and I was like, that doesn't sound like that guy from Groundhog Day or Columbo.
No, not at all.
Nor does it sound like Kevin Pollak.
Well, I kept reading all of the Kevin Pollak brownie parts as his Columbo impression because that's just how Kevin Pollak is in my head. So it definitely gave this a surreal element. It was still boring.
I won't torture listeners with my bad attempt at a Christopher Walken, but that's how Kevin Pollak always sounds in my head. So.
But that's a good hint, even before Plot in 60 Seconds. This is 100% the kind of book that you have to make up a lot of games to keep yourself interested to get through.
Yeah, no, there's no disagreement from me. I said earlier, and we'll get into this a bit later, but this kind of reminds me of one of those songs that you hear, and then as soon as it's over, you can't remember how it went. It flew in and out of my head so fast because it's just like a laundry list of things and descriptions and fucking names, and none of it's memorable.
A lot of proper nouns to wade through this time, none of which are really explained or defined.
Pretty much if you were to just kind of glance at any page, you might think that you were looking at something in German or one of those languages that capitalize all the nouns because, as far as I know, German's the only one that does that. But it's everything has a name, like it's almost like you're reading like a video game manual, and it's like, oh yeah, press X for insight, or press Y for shield wall. Like everything has a fucking title, like it should be covered in the manual. There's no manual.
And you should know that insight, INS, are definitely capitalized, and there's no space between them.
Yeah.
There's also mage sight, I think, which I guess is the same thing, but has a different name.
It's more magical.
There's also outsight, which is just sight, but sometimes he refers to it.
Right. There's also tree sight, which is when you're looking at a tree. Homework sight, which is the least good kind of sight. That's one of those superpowers that's really, if you think about it, more of a bad thing.
Mm-hmm. It's a blessing and a curse.
Whoa.
Every time the insight or one of the things with a capital S insight popped up, I wanted there to be a TM at the end of it. Like it felt like a trademarked property.
We need to do plot in 60 seconds because people at home are like, wow, I want to know everything that happens in this awesome book. So we've
Delete podcast.
I downloaded this to hear about what happens to Willow. So
I just want to say that I do not envy you this challenge because not much happens in this book and literally nothing happens in 60 seconds.
but it's long.
So good luck.
Anyway,
All right.
so are you ready? Oh, wait a second. We're about to do plot in 60 seconds. We need to play a song.
Nobody knows if you finish or not. You got 60 seconds to give them a plot. Plot in 60 seconds.
All right, that was a cool song.
I loved it.
So are you?
Thank you.
I've never heard it live before. I didn't know you guys played it every time.
We do. If you listen closely, you can hear slight little flourishes change every time. It's a game. Go back and listen to every single episode.
But make sure to delete and re-download if you're going to do that.
That's
And then
true.
rate and review.
Exactly. This was even better the 15th time. Okay, plot in 60 seconds. You will have 60 seconds to describe the plot of this amazing novel. Are you ready?
No, but I'll try.
Okay, go.
Okay, Willow Upgood is a Nelwyn, which is like a hobbit. And at the end of Willow, the movie, he went back to his house and his family and was fine. But then he was becoming a sorcerer, and then he had a dream that he was on a dragon, but he was really on a dragon. And then he saw some people you remember from the movie Willow, and then they died on the next page forever. Then he goes on a very long journey, full of scenes that seem like they're going to be much shorter than they are. He tries to go to the Sacred Princess Allura Danin's birthday party. He gets arrested. He almost gets turned into a demon. There are a lot of fights inside people. He kind of gets turned into a demon. Then there's traveling. There's a boat. It doesn't do well. There's a forest fire. It doesn't do well. There's a big hollow mountain. I don't know why it was there. Everyone's an asshole to Willow the whole time. And then it ends.
Oh, hey.
Wow.
Excellent. Yeah, so this is one of those and then books. I think we've described books like this on the show before, where I kind of feel like you get the impression that it's like listening to a 6-year-old tell a story because it's and then this happened and then this happened and then this happened.
Right.
There's not really a structure to it. So that was a great encapsulation of all of the nonsense that happened.
That
There's
was
so much
magnificent.
more nonsense, though. Like, so much inside of people fighting. Like, just so much stuff that didn't actually happen. But it happened inside Willow. Oh, I didn't even say. Willow's not called Willow anymore.
Yeah,
He's called
he changes his
Thorn
name.
Drumheller.
And that's very important. It goes by in about a shortish paragraph, but has massive repercussions for what passes for the plot and significance of the
I guess.
events in that plot.
Except you didn't need to do that, and it was really annoying.
Well,
really weird.
I'm kind of curious. As I read this book, I was thinking about it because the two main recognizable characters from Willow, spoiler, other than Willow himself, die in the epilogue, basically, if
They die
not chapter
off
1.
screen. You don't
Yeah.
even see them die. It's like you get a title card that says, 12 years later, everyone dead.
And then our hero changes his name to something else, right? So at that point, the connections to the story are tenuous at best.
Also, his
So
family and everyone else like him disappears from the earth completely.
Yeah. So I'm almost wondering if this was just written already. Like if he had a story laying around and then figured out a way to make it, like part of this Willow tale that needed to be told.
The impression that I've gotten, based on a 6-minute YouTube video I watched right before we started recording, is that Chris Claremont sat down with George Lucas for a few hours and they talked about what the Willow book would be. And I think that was the extent of the George Lucas involvement. And then Chris Claremont just went with it. He just went all over with it. My personal belief is that he rolled like a really cool halfling sorcerer in his D&D game and was like, I have to share this with the world. I'll make it Willow.
That's not a bad explanation, and it gets at something that I think is really crucial about this. I'll say first that there's a note somewhere that says story by George Lucas, book by Chris Claremont, which fits what you just said. But the fundamental question about this thing for me is, why does this book even exist? It came out in 96, so it's 8 or 9 years too late to the non-smash hit you remember as Willow. It has tenuous at best connections, like we've already said. The main character doesn't even share his name, and all the other cool supporting characters that you actually liked, as opposed to the slapstick brownies, which we didn't mention, but are little tiny Tinkerbell-sized flying elves.
Kevin Pollak at all.
Yeah, all of those characters are dead. So why does this book exist? Who is it for? Is it for the Willow superfan? Because if it is, it's not good fan service. It's not for them. It's not a good fantasy novel. It's wildly not a good fantasy novel.
That was my question the whole time, was why am I reading this and why does this exist? Because it came out like 7 or 8 years after the movie. It didn't share anything with the movie except ostensibly a main character. Although apparently it sold 200,000 copies, so I don't know.
I guess that's what George Lucas's name would do in '96.
I suppose.
Yeah.
But I was so baffled by what I was reading that I actually stopped about 2/3 of the way through and like YouTubed Willow, the movie, because it's on there. And I watched the first half and was actually even angrier than I was before. Because
it's not good.
That movie, like, here's what that movie is good for. If you have a dog or a cat and there's a lot of hair on a carpet that you also own, that movie should be able to remove that hair. Because that movie sucks.
Oh, man. Okay, so I have a theory. I wrote this. It says, important fact / speculation in my notes.
What are you gunning for like you want to be in the new X-Files?
I do. I want to believe. So while George Lucas created the world and the story of Willow, he was not involved in the screenwriting process at all. The script was written by a guy named Bob Dolman, and Lucas was not directly involved, right? So just judging from what we now know of George Lucas to be true, like from looking at his extended Star Wars mythos and stuff like that, my guess is that Lucas, the way Willow happened, is wrote some crazy like world Bible, like just some huge weighty tome about the world of Willow and all these things that'll happen, and then handed it off to a screenwriter. Screenwriter comes back and is like, this movie's going to be 8 hours long, so here's one piece of the story that's interesting. Here's your book back, you fucking crazy freak. Right. And so I think Lucas basically spent, the next 7 years sitting on all of these wonderful, amazing ideas that didn't get used in the movie, and at some point just reached his tipping point, be that financial or just the world needs to know.
Right.
And decided he was going to find, someone who was willing and capable of being the person that brings life to the extended Willow universe. That's my theory.
That's
Tricia,
a pretty good theory. Well, yeah, like I said, I think I got the impression that this is something that Chris Claremont did because he wanted to, have his name on a book, like a real book, not just a comic book. I know he's written other novels. I have not read any of them. But I think that, a lot of comic book writers do that bid for respectability thing. Not that comic book writing isn't respectable. My house is literally covered with comic books. But I think I get the impression that kind of dovetailed with George Lucas probably putting out feelers and saying, who wants to write more about everyone's favorite little guy Willow? And I guess Chris Claremont was like, I've heard of that movie.
Right. So what we are basically describing is two vanity projects
I can't decide if
smooshed
it's
into one.
A vanity project or a cash grab or some sort of strange hybrid of the two. But it's definitely...
Yeah, if it's a cash grab, it's the worst executed cash grab in history. Like, let's find a movie that came out 8 years ago and write the worst novel ever written.
With a respectably middling box office draw.
Yeah. Like, I even the Wikipedia page for it, because I too, friends, have done research. Even the Wikipedia page just says kind of defensively, it didn't not make money at the box office. It easily recouped its investment and made its budget back.
There's a big problem with it if it's a cash grab, though. And, I mean, it should be mentioned this is the first part of a trilogy, because, of course, it is.
Yeah.
But a huge problem with this, and I even went back and watched some of Willow just to be sure, and Willow was a movie that was like a family movie. Like, it was very kid-friendly. And, like, this book is, like, both impenetrable and dark. Yeah. And, like, it's just not something that I imagine a kid enjoying. And it seems like if you were going for a cash grab, you would do something maybe marketed a little bit more towards the same audience as the movie. Like, this really feels like an attempt, like, at serious respectability from everyone involved. and it's weird because it's so silly.
It's very, very strange.
Yeah, if you were shooting for a cash grab, you would make it either related to something successful or good.
Yeah.
And this is none of those things.
That's a good point. I mean, Willow was not a flop by any means, but it also like was pretty.
It didn't set the world on fire. Like, I thought Willow was the best movie because it had, I don't know, like a cute baby, and I was 8 when it came out, and there was a fairy. I mean, it ticked all of my boxes there for, fantasy, fun, and high adventure. But this book made no impact on me. If this had come out when I was 11, I might be in trouble because I might be like the wacko, like editing the Shadow Wars GeoCities wiki that is still sticking around out there, I'm sure. That might be me, but thank God it waited till I got to high school and I discovered on Wii and I didn't pick it up. But yeah, it's definitely, it doesn't have any of the stuff that movie had, and it doesn't have anything that like a successful fantasy series really has either. It's miserable. So much of the book is people just being dicks at Willow. Everyone's like furious with him just because he's, I don't know, Mr. Magic Man, and like they either don't believe he can fix things, or they want him to fix everything, or they think he's a demon, or they think he's not powerful enough. Like, nobody is nice to him. There's like no point in the book where people are like, "Thanks, Willow, you really did us a solid there by, I don't know, getting eaten by the castle." I'm not even sure what happened. Everyone's just so mean to him. It's like, I was getting bummed out reading this. I was defensive of Thorn Drumheller. Stupid fucking names book. So many of my margins just have these fucking names scrawled in it, and like, like a pen and a fist. Like,
oh my God, you seriously need to like seek some serious medical attention for that, because if you wrote that every time it came up, you have RSI. Not
every time, no, just all of the names. Like, one of the characters, let me see if I can find his stupid name. His name, Rin Taxemenyan.
Oh, yeah.
Why would you name somebody that? Why would you put that over and over again in a book so that people's brains have to try to process that every time it comes up? It was like reading like a Russian novel. Like, it just didn't make sense in my head. And then they would call him Rin or Tak or Taxemenyan or the whatever species of whatever he is. Ugh.
Pick a name and settle on it. We need to take a break. Before we do, I just want to mention, because I totally forgot to mention this, but the book itself, it opens right off the bat with our hero fantasizing about strangling a pig. So just keep that in your mind while we go to a break, and we'll be back to discuss Shadow Moon some more. Thank you. All right, welcome back to I Don't Even Own a Television. We're talking about a book that George Lucas wrote that's not about Star Wars, and I don't think George Lucas actually wrote it because Chris Claremont did. It's called Shadow Moon, and if that was confusing, you should have tried to read this fucking book. Ayo.
Shots fired.
Yeah. Takes are too hot.
Yeah, it's hotter than see, I can't even pronounce the name of any of the places in this. I was trying to come with like an awesome pun, but that's not going to happen because I'm not even going to try like to pronounce tier argument or whatever.
That's true. And while I was like flipping to look for one, I saw a sentence that just read, "He felt a pang sharper than a knife when he thought of the brownies." And now, frankly, I'm thinking about brownies.
I'm a little hungry now.
Hunger pang.
Yeah.
Oh, man, this is a great segment for awesome puns. I'm sure everyone at home is loving it. So I think we talked a lot about what this book is and the whole Willow side of things in the first segment. I think we need to drill down a little bit, and a good way to ease into that is to do some high points, low points. So we're going to alternate. We'll do 2 of each. We're going to start with a high point, and I will go ahead and go first. Hang on one second. I need to scroll because I have to look at my notes to remember what I liked about this book. Oh, yeah, death dogs. I like the death dogs. They were cool in the movie, and they're cool in the book. They're like big, scary things that are crossed between like a warthog and a dog, and they're fucking cool. All right.
Can I follow that up with something I liked?
Sure.
I liked the cover.
Yep.
I think you guys got a different cover than I did because my cover is terrible looking.
Is it a big black knight on a black charger or a white knight in black armor on a charger?
Oh, yeah, it is.
Yeah,
I don't like it.
Dissension in the ranks.
We're in a fight now.
Oh, no. If I flip my table over, I'm going to spill my drink.
I will say one thing about the way this book is designed is it has pictures all over it. And so there's no way to hide your shame when you're reading it.
None. Did you have a high point you wanted to hit, Trish?
Yeah, I will say, as much as a lot of it really irritated me, I kind of liked the fact that the magic in this was a little different than in a lot of other fantasy books. As I kind of hinted at, I read all of them when I was a kid. So this kind of went for sort of like a primal, more, wild magic nature-y thing that was kind of interesting, even if it was narratively awful. At least I was like, at least this isn't like a, R.A. Salvatore book. Like, this is slightly original. I was really digging deep for that good thing.
It's fair. It's fair, and you did a good job.
Oh, thanks.
So I'm going to start us off here with a low point. For me, I would say the pacing of this book was interminable and weird. Like, there are so many situations in this book where 100 pages go by and nothing happens, and then everything in the world happens in 2 pages, and then there's like 150 pages of nothing happening. Like, basically, like, the book opens up in the epilogue it's a really long epilogue. It's like at least 40 pages, I think. And it just takes all this time to describe this crazy dream that Willow has, and then the entire world is destroyed in 2 pages immediately following that.
And then you turn the page and it's 14 years later.
Yes.
And yeah, a fun game would be name the fight scene that isn't interrupted for a long description of what a character is wearing.
Ooh,
Oh God!
yeah.
You're
there
going to
aren't
take
any
my low
fights.
point.
Well, let's transition right there, Tricia. Why don't you hit us with a low point?
Every goddamn person he introduces, he tells you every single item of clothing he's wearing, or her, and even people who aren't very important, even people that maybe you only see in a couple of scenes. He makes sure you know what color their epaulets are, and then like they get eaten by a death dog or whatever. And this is a very Chris Claremont-y thing. He was. I know that I'd read about him. I don't know if it was in the Marvel Untold Storybook or what, but somewhere that he would, his scripts were long and there would be just paragraph after paragraph describing what people are wearing. And he obviously held on to that. And I could see that making sense if you want to make sure, like, I got to make sure they put Wolverine in jeans and a bomber jacket, not his uniform. Let me write it down. But in this case, like, I don't actually need that for the guy who's going to be in 2 scenes and then never show up again.
Yeah.
Do not care what color his socks are.
It's
Right.
totally true.
Yeah. Especially the guy who walked into a fight scene and is about to get eaten by a dead dog.
Yeah.
You don't need to know that his doublet was not matched with his singlet.
I don't want to learn anything about him because it's just a level of commitment that I'm not going to be able to live up to. He's not going to stay with me for very long.
Yeah.
Low point, collision.
I would say that my low point was the experience of reading this book.
Ooh.
It really felt like I struggled with this, but it honestly, to me, felt like I was struggling through cotton balls the whole time, but it wasn't even cotton balls. It was like Vaseline-soaked cotton balls. So like the whole experience was really confusing. It was really unpleasant. I didn't learn anything from it other than this is confusing and unpleasant. Everything about trying to figure out what is he actually saying on the sentence level? What is happening on the plot level? What are these people thinking or feeling on the motivation level? Like, none of it was there.
Why is
Yeah.
this happening to me?
Why is this happening? Why does this book exist?
What have I done to deserve this?
Right. Why did you two do this to me?
Okay, let's do one more round here. High points. I would like to start this off. This is kind of cheating, but whatever. One of my high points is this passage. Elora wonders if the whole point of the day is to kill her. Her clothes are too ornate, and there are simply too many of them to allow her to go to the bathroom. So I felt like that was kind of a good encapsulation of this book. And then later, when I was looking at Amazon reviews, which I'll get to more later, somebody else quoted that passage, and it was after I had made a note of it. I'm like, this is perfect. So,
I feel the same way every time I wear button-fly jeans.
yeah, so difficult. Okay, Tricia, would you like to go next?
Okay, I will kind of pile on the, this is good, wait, this is good stuff, right? I liked the horribly named Nightcrawler analog, the Rin Taxamanian, who was totally Nightcrawler. So he was all swashbuckly and furry, swashbuckly. But I kind of found myself like okay with that character because he seemed to like, I don't know if he was supposed to be the reader in the book, but he would occasionally maybe ask a question or explain something to somebody. And he wasn't one of those, you know, he didn't just shout at Willow all the time, although he did shout at him a couple times. But I sort of liked him. I was like, I'm okay with this guy, probably because he reminds me of Nightcrawler, and that's basically what he is. So maybe I gave him a little more slack than I gave anyone else, but that's sort of a positive.
So unfortunately, we work in an audio medium, so nobody listening could see that the entire time from the minute you started describing your high point, Chris started making like really obvious, over-the-top, dejected motions. So I'm guessing that your high point was the same piece.
It's not. We'll get to it later.
Okay, gotcha.
His low point is the character I liked.
Yeah. No, it's related to something we will talk about in due time.
Foreshadowing.
Yeah.
It's a new element to the show.
Indeed.
How about your high point then?
My second high point is that this book was cheaper than Doom Knee Deep in the Dead.
Yeah. It was much cheaper.
So, for those of you who scoring at home, first, congratulations. Second, there are exactly two things I liked about this book, and one was the cover, and the second was that it didn't
price
cost $15.
Nothing within the covers of this book
Not a
is
word.
one of your high points.
All right, so one more round of low points. Once again, I will begin. This is going to get a little ranty, but I'll try to keep it concise here. But just kind of... There is a tendency in this book to over-describe everything, which I feel like kind of is common in a lot of fantasy and stuff. But here it's done in service of world building, but none of it works. And it's amazing to me, like, that a book that spends as much time as it does describing scenery and clothing and the way everything looks still feels like it's populated by, like, cardboard cutouts. Mm-hmm. I wrote down a good example of this, I think, is there's a scene where Thorn, or Willow, if you will, is in the kitchen while a giant feast is being prepared. It's a fancy kitchen. And as he strolls through the kitchen, I'd say about 10 to 12 pages are dedicated to just kind of describing the duties of these individual groups of workers and what they do to prepare this big feast that's going on. And then it's never mentioned again. Right. And it feels like an attempt at world building, and like I said, I was looking at reviews later on to see what other people's opinions were, and even the people who really like this book acknowledge kind of that there are these long stretches where nothing happens, but they're like, oh, it's the first book of a trilogy, so he's just setting everything up.
But I mean, even if you're deeply committed to world building, you don't need to go to the level that says, oh my God, there are dirty dishes and there are also clean dishes.
Exactly.
I need to explain this.
Exactly. And I mean, it's a garbage excuse either way. I mean, like, even Tolkien, I'm not a huge fan of Tolkien, and I think I've mentioned this before, but even he, when he dedicate these huge, like, reams of text to describing what a building looked like, you would remember it afterwards, and it worked in service to the world. I mean, there's a rich world that existed there. This feels like there's so many attempts made to do that, but it never catches. Like, it really feels like props or a video game, and I hate to always go back to this feels like a video game but I feel like badly written books and video games have a lot in common right now.
I wish that I could show you, because I had written on one of my my crazy person notes that are all over this book. Like, I definitely look like a lone gunman here. But there's a description when they first get to Angwin of this, I don't know, this big market they walk through. And I just wrote in a Post-it note, I bet we never come back here. And we never go back there. Like, all of this ink is spilled to describe a fantasy market, which he could have just said it looked like a fucking fantasy market. It looked like a marketplace, and all of the things with marketplaces in it. Let's just go on to something else. It looks like, I mean, it's pretty much a second unit director said background action, and people walked by with carts and bags, and that's what happened, and you don't need to spend 5 pages on it. But no, they did, and yeah, I absolutely wrote, I bet we never come back here, and I was totally right. That was my foresight with a capital S.
All right, let's go around one more time because I got a little long-winded there. But Tricia, one more low point.
My second low point is going to be, and I suspect we're going to get on this later, the word usage, which is a little strange. I went through and highlighted at least 5 different uses of the word asperity.
Oh my God.
That's true.
I have a note about that too. Yes.
People kept saying things with asperity. A couple people did things with alacrity as well, a couple of times, which I guess didn't stand out quite as much. But like I said at the beginning, this feels like it was written by Chris Claremont and his thesaurus, and it's very much, he doesn't use words wrong. I think that he knows what they mean, but I think he doesn't need to use them. And another thing, I just noticed that I highlighted this. I almost put my highlighter through the book. So excited was I when someone referred to a child as a youngling. I was like, Lucas got that fucking shit in there. Younglings.
Good catch.
And I was really excited about how much I hated that.
Good catch. I have a little theory about asperity, which is there's a certain kind of prose, and this book is definitely that kind of prose, that I think is the kind of prose that you end up really liking when your tastes are frozen at about age 13. Mm-hmm. You read your first, and there's good examples of it. One that I'll probably mention later, like Anne McCaffrey, when she's writing for kids, or Ursula Le Guin when she's writing for kids, are good examples of it. It's kind of flowery, it's kind of vocab heavy, right? It feels like a little bit of thesaurus abuse, but it's also good. And I think there's a certain kind of reader that reads that and decides, in all caps, this is what good writing is like, and they never read anything else, and they never progress past that. And I think, honestly...
This is how adults talk.
And I think, honestly, the word asperity is always the flag of that.
yeah. To make,
anyway, that's my little high horse.
To make my regular music reference that I always do, there's a Bad Religion lyric quality to a lot of this book.
Yes.
Where it feels like, what's the most verbose way to say this one simple thing?
Yep.
And it comes across like lascivious, the adjective of the decade, and your alluring intricacies.
How many syllables can I take to say that the government sucks?
Yeah.
Very much.
He mounted, he got on his horse. No, my good man. With alacrity, he mounted his steed.
Equine companion.
Yeah.
There's a point when one of the brownies says something is like, I'm going to pronounce it wrong because I'm not French, but he says something was like puissant or puissance or something. And it's one of those things that really stood out to me because that's a French word and I didn't know we were in fantasy France. But also, again, in my head, I was like, I'm pretty sure Kevin Pollak just shouted that in front of a green screen, and it doesn't really fit very well. It was very jarring.
Yeah. So really all it means is power. I know that because China Mieville really crutches on that word. When he means magic and good, he says puissance, or however it's pronounced. And imagining Kevin Pollak shouting that is delicious.
Dressed in rags, standing in front of a green screen, pretending to be small.
We need one more low point from you, Mr. Collision.
Gosh, how can I pick just one? No, this builds really well on what you were saying, Tricia, which is that Chris Claremont literally does not know how words work. I'm going to choose a sentence of this book called The Last Sentence. And it reads like this. Then, for what felt like the first time in a lifetime, he let a smile of true joy crease his weathered features, and he sang the hope of the world to a deep and gentle sleep. Now, in the version of English that I speak, when X sings Y to sleep, what that means is X sings to Y, and Y falls asleep. So he just put the hope of the world to sleep.
Now we're done with that.
I'm not saying you need to edit these kinds of books that carefully, but maybe just cast your eye over the first and last pages.
And with his delightful baritone, he bought the world a Coke.
And even as a metaphor, Like,
Yeah.
he sang the hope of the world at somebody who was asleep. I
think they were calling Elora Danan the hope of the world. I think they were saying that she is, but they'd never really called her that. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's all good.
You're right. I just actually found when I popped open the end of the first paragraph of the little prologue, or the end of the prologue, ends with one of my favorite things, which is a paragraph ends with an ellipses, and then a single line after it starts with an ellipses. So just in case you didn't think this was important, he's using, I don't know, like sixth grade poetry techniques to make sure you know, guys, this is, and I'm like, that's not how, and no book editor should let that in. Like, that's not how you publish a book. Why did that happen? They're not even the right kind of ellipses. They're just 3 periods with big spaces between them. It's not even condensed. Also, I don't know about you guys, but my font for this book was really weird.
Holy shit. Yes,
the question marks looked crazy. They looked like upside down question marks.
Oh, why are they upside down? That's the biggest question of the book.
And the whole font, like all of the serifs are at this weird angle that I guess is supposed to look ye olde, but it makes it so much more difficult to read than it needs to be. And this should be mentioned, this is a fucking 400 some odd page fucking slog fest. So
452 pages.
And I'm sorry. I'm surprised that this wasn't someone's low point, because I meant to bring up the fact that about, I don't know, a tenth of the book is in italics.
Yes. Oh, man. And those question marks, though, I gotta just say, like, they're rendered in a way that I could probably only describe as a dragon's claw.
Yeah.
And they take up way more width than any punctuation mark should.
They're so weird.
I know this sounds like we're just, like, you know, picking at very small things here.
No, send us an email. I will rip a page out of this fucking book and mail it to you, and you will know that this is physically painful to read.
There was some weird typesetting stuff too. Like, I remember a couple paragraphs that looked like, I'm sure it was just my version, but like the leading was shrunk way down. So like, what is it, kerning I'm looking for. So the letters would just be all squished together for one paragraph, but nothing would be actually different about it. It's just like someone wasn't paying attention at the book factory.
When the word house is in blue, it's because Johnny Truant has gone through the Davidson record. And all right, sorry, that's a really bad House of Leaves joke, and Chris is pantomiming ripping a book up as we speak. So it's probably a good time to go to break. We'll be back in a few minutes, or probably way quicker than that for you at home. So stick around. Welcome back to I Don't Even Own a Television, a podcast about bad books. We're talking about Shadow Moon by Chris Claremont and George Lucas, and flipping it off aggressively. We, I guess, should play some games, because some fun needs to be had, since we've all wasted days of our lives reading this crap. So let's go ahead and begin with America's #1 most popular podcast segment, Dramatic Readings. Here's a song.
Dramatic readings. We're gonna make it sound important. Dramatic readings. Yeah, I got some words for you.
Oh, that was soulful and good.
God, that was dramatic.
Yeah. Ooh, so important. So dramatic readings, we're going to read pieces of this book in your ear and make it sound so serious. So, all right, Collision.
All
dramatic reading for us?
Yes, please.
Let's do it.
I swim, I hunt, I play. I try to do none lasting harm, and think nothing amiss in asking much the same in return. How many folk in that city across the way walked their waking days by the same rules? How many of my brethren will suffer from the storm that killed Morag? Mortal I may be, peckling, but does that give gods and goddesses the right to rip my life to shreds as though I was no more than a piece on their game board? If they want a war, let them find a place to do it that leaves the rest of us the hell alone! New character. Bavmorda was no god. She was a woman with tainted dreams and the desire and ability to make them real. No god. No dreams, no desire, no ability. I don't know. I've heard the stories. If this Bavmorda was such an abomination, why do the great powers have to drag that Nelwyn into it? What's his name? And the reason I read that is because, like I said, this is the book that required you to play a lot of games. I got to that section and I was like, this sounds like a pretty good Crust song.
Yeah.
Like I can
gods.
imagine. Yeah. And that was like literally the most fun I had reading this.
So it's my turn. I've been holding this back for a while now, waiting for the rock bottom, so to speak. And so I'm going to debut a new dramatic reading segment, which is when I hate the book so much that I read a paragraph from Mick Foley's autobiography, Mankind. Have a nice day. So at this point, Raven made his presence known by using a steel chair on both Funk and Dreamer's backs. With Funk down, Raven pulled out 2 foreign objects, a 10-pound weight, and a roll of athletic tape. Slowly, I lifted my foot while he taped the weight to the top of my boot. This was great. Sure enough, I kicked a field goal with Terry's testicles, and the wounded Texan was helped to the back. All right, yeah, so that was better than everything in this book.
I have a better sense of what happened in that encounter than I do in any fight scenes in this book. Mm-hmm. Like, I can see that in my head.
By a wide margin.
Anyway, hopefully I won't have to resort to that too many times, but literally reading this book, there was not a single passage that even jumped out to me as, this would be entertaining to read aloud, which I think leads us right into our next segment here that we're going to do, entitled Russian Roulette. Here is a song.
Russian roulette, Russian roulette, not actually Russian.
All right. Russian Roulette, we are going to alternate, flipping through the pages of our book quickly until I say stop, at which point a random paragraph, or longer, it's up to you, will be read. I'm looking at Collision, he's ready to go, so why don't you start us off flipping here? Stop!
All right, give me 1 second. Oh yeah, this is great. I think we actually touched on this earlier. North of the promenade, the lesser slopes of the lower hills were the province of the minor nobility. Landed gentry, who for convenience kept a house in the capital, and life peers, commoners whose titles were an acknowledgement of service to the lion throne. That was just a sentence with no verb.
Yep.
Sorry. The permanent government was found there, all the departments of state. As you moved uptown, moving along the shore toward the gate, the more formidable the hill, the more impressive the title.
Nice.
Thanks. That was a thing I read.
Yeah, that was descriptive in a way that I've now forgotten everything that you just said. So, cool.
So that's exactly what reading this book is like. That's one paragraph on one page.
That came back later, though, right? Like, they definitely touched on that.
Yeah, Life Peers comes back for sure, because every time they mention Life Peers, I thought that it sounded like the name of a shitty startup.
Wow, I did not remember a single thing about Life Peers.
Well, there you go. The book goes in one side and out the other. What would they do, or what is your fave?
I have a what is your fave for you guys, and we've touched on this already.
Well, here's a song.
What is your fave? What is your fave? When you're presented with a list of options, what is your fave?
Oh my goodness, that song is so good. Oh my goodness, there's so many dogs walking around in this podcast. By the way, that's the elephant in the room we haven't acknowledged. Both ends of this conversation have loud dogs in effect, so apologies. But you'll deal with it. I know everyone at home actually loves it, so continue to love it.
Yeah.
Okay. This is What Is Your Fave?
Review our dogs.
Please go to iTunes and review the dogs. Collision, why don't you take a point on this?
I've got one for you guys. Okay, so this is a book by George Star Wars Lucas and Chris X-Men Claremont, and it is largely a bad thesaurus ripoff rewriting of Lord of the Rings. We've touched on all this before. And it certainly has some common elements with all of those things. So, what is your favorite character you liked better when they were in Star Wars or X-Men?
Oh.
Or did you prefer one that was actually lifted from Lord of the Rings?
Now I get what was happening earlier. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, so here are your options. There are 4 options that were lifted from Star Wars or X-Men, or you can pick and then name one that you preferred from Lord of the Rings. 1, Rin, the devil-may-care pacifist with a heart of gold under a thick coat of dark fur. Yes, that's right. You may recognize him as X-Men's Nightcrawler.
Man, that's great.
Was it Thorn, the young adventurer, swept up in world-shaking events, coming to understand his own magical powers, the darkness in the world, and the darkness in himself, who you may remember as Luke Skywalker?
Yeah.
Was it Allura, the magic young woman with ill-defined abilities and shiny, shiny skin, who you may remember as a pubescent Emma Frost from the X-Men?
Yeah.
Or was it Cora, the tall, regal, exotic black woman, and Chris Claremont fetish object that you may remember better as Storm from X-Men?
Yeah, wow. Yeah, the second two I hadn't even put together. But if I'm going to go first, it's definitely it's going to be the Storm comparison.
Right.
Just because that hadn't occurred to me, and now that you said that, that blew my mind. Yeah, there are so many X-Men in this book. Thinly disguised X-Men. Tricia, how about you?
I like this. I was actually going to go slightly off the 4 options just because this occurred to me as well. There's a point in the book where Willow literally takes a part of his soul and turns it into a soul sword to try to fight from becoming a demon, which is basically everything that happens to Magic in the X-Men or New Mutants, whoever she is. Ileana Rasputin, she has a soul sword and she's worried about turning into a demon, and they call her the Dark Child. Like, she gets called the Dark Child nonstop, and in this one, they called Corey, which is not the same, but they called Corey Demon Child all the time. There are, by the way, at various points, at least 3 different people in this book that get called the Child, which is a little irritating. But yeah, so I think that I much prefer the Dark Child, Demon Child, Soul Sword variant when it comes from Ileana Rasputin than in this stupid, boring book.
No, it's a good one.
That's fair. That's very, very fair.
It's a deep pull, and it will give us all sorts of credit. So thank you.
Yeah.
Collision.
Yeah.
What is your fave?
This I only actually put together while you guys were talking earlier. I guess my fave is Gurren Jaren. We never did decide what his name is, but he's a young horseman with a lot of duty, and he's basically economy. He's the store brand Strider.
Yeah.
Before you find out that Strider's supposed to be the king, so I kind of liked him. I also like that he dies.
Yeah. Well, if you like people dying, this is the book for you because it happens a lot.
Yeah, spoiler. And it does end with, like, the end, you have no clear idea who's left alive. Like, a bunch of the people that are in the traveling party that you've been following for 452 interminable fucking pages may or may not be alive. Like, he just sort of forgets that they were there for very, very long stretches. I have a theory about that that I'm going to inflict on you guys if you have a sec. So sure. Chris Claremont, we know, is a comic book writer, and we've had our fun with that. But his background was as an actor, and he couldn't really find work as an actor, so he kind of fell into comic book writing. And so much of this feels like a guy imagining backstory and just thickly laying on the backstory. So a common thing that happens in this book is 4 people will walk into a scene, and then 2 will have this heavy interaction while the other 2 are completely absent. That's, as I mentioned, how the book ends. And it really feels to me like an actor trying to get into the heads of these people, but kind of forgetting that there's a whole scene going on. Yeah. So that's my theory. I don't know what you guys think.
No, it sounds good. I also think it's probably a good time for us to go to break. So let's do that, and then we're going to come back. We're going to do some recommendations and some letters, and we will get on out of here. So thanks for listening.
Riding in my Challenger, faded off this weed brownie, turning down the music cause the weed is loud enough already. Niggas ask me about my pays. I say I keep it steady, gripping on the wheel, spending money like a politician, tipping on the bill. It's going down like this bitch was sitting on the hill. I keep my girlfriend in the mix.
Welcome back to I Don't Even Own a Television, a podcast about bad books. We've been talking about this horrible piece of shit about Willow. Shadow Moon. I almost said Blood Moon. That makes it sound cooler than it actually is.
I think that was a different book by Chris Claremont, and I'm not joking.
No, I don't think you are.
Oh, man. Good stuff. But yeah, so before we get going here, let's talk about some things that aren't bad. We like to recommend things to our listeners at home to kind of temper the edge of the raw hatred. So, Tricia, do you have something picked out?
I'm really sorry if someone plugged this on your show before, but I recently read Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, and I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was a very beautiful, well-written book that did the sort of post-collapse of civilization thing, but in a kind of more personal way and in a less tropey way. It didn't feel too done. And also for a book that kind of the Horrible Willow book did a lot of bouncing around in time and flashbacks and flash forwards and things. And I feel like this is a book that did that moving around in time and telling stories that were kind of from a bunch of different time periods and weaving them together in a way that was very easy to follow and very organic and very immersive, which is the opposite of the book we read.
It is. No, that sounds cool.
Excellent.
How about you, Collision?
Sure. I can't remember if I talked about this before. I might have, but I don't care. Again, an antidote to this bullshit spin-off nonsense by Chris Claremont and George Lucas is by Ursula Le Guin. It's called A Wizard of Earthsea. It's basically Harry Potter 20, 30 years earlier, but like the first 4 Harry Potter books take place in a tight 180 pages. And is more interesting and better written. So, if you're in the mood for that kind of thing, recommend it highly.
Yeah, Le Guin is awesome. Multiple Hugo Award winner.
Yeah.
Seconded.
Good politics haver.
Yes, she is a haver of good politics. I'm going to recommend Mankind Have a Nice Day by Mick Foley. It's an autobiography by a professional wrestler, but he is one of the most introspective, I think, and definitely articulate in an interesting way voices that you will get out of that field. And a lot of you guys know I'm a nerd for this kind of shit, so I've been reading it lately. It's really cool. My only beef with it is there's a lot of full color pictures of shit that does not need to be reproduced in color. Whole lot of Crimson Mask going on. Could have done without that, but
that means he's covered with blood on the face.
It's true. Yeah, so anyway, just read that or something. Read anything that isn't Shadow Moon.
Yeah, please do not read Shadow Moon. I don't think I said this before. I liked this book less than anything else I've read for this podcast.
Wow.
I just told you that I heard about this book. I wasn't advocating to do this book. I would have liked to do a shorter and more interesting book about things happening.
I don't blame you. I just wanted that on the record.
No, I will take responsibility for this, because when I heard what it was, I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. It's a novel by George Lucas about Willow. Like, how can this not be hilariously bad? Turns out it's bad and not hilariously.
No. I'm really worried that like people are going to listen to this and they're going to have even less of an idea of what happened in this book than I did, except that's impossible. So anyone listening to this podcast could write a better Wikipedia entry for this book than I could. And I read it.
Speaking of Wikipedia entries, I wanted to bring this up. If you go to the Wikipedia page for it, there's not much about this book at all. There is a section called plot, and it's literally just ends in the middle of a sentence that's describing about page 20. Like, it's just like, and then this happened, and then the rest of the book is not described at all.
I actually like that. Shadow Moon, the book that broke crowdsourcing.
Yeah. There is, though, one of the top results for it, if you Google, is a really awesome Willow fan site that looks to date back to the late 90s and is still there. Wow. Like, it has tiled backgrounds and animated GIFs, like, all over the place. It's the one I'm
thinking of. It doesn't even have a good description of Shadow Moon, because I tried to find a plot summary of this book online, and I couldn't.
I did too.
I remember looking, I'm like, oh, thank God, someone made a Willow Wikia, because of course they fucking did, and it didn't actually have, it just said Shadow Moon. It's a book about Willow.
Speaking of recommendations and the internet, which we're talking about, I'll cover this quickly. Something I did halfway through due to a conversation I stumbled onto on El Interneto. I Googled...
That's Spanish, folks.
Yeah. I Googled Chris Claremont fetish.
Oh, no.
Because of something somebody said.
Oh, no.
It's a moderate rabbit hole. I will just say that mind control and bondage gear are apparently both in everything Chris Claremont has ever written. And if you're an X-Men fan, as I once was, this will cause things to kind of click into your head.
Oh, all that Hellfire Club stuff, they're all bondagey.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So much leather.
That's disturbing.
And how like every character's mind gets invaded a lot.
I don't like this train of thought.
No, so I don't recommend it exactly, but it will make some sense of some things if you ever gave a shit about Chris Claremont.
My mind is being invaded by creepy feelings, and I don't like it.
I just want the record to show that I have a lot of affection for the Chris Claremont era X books that were important to me when I was from 9 to 14. I just don't need to revisit them, apparently. I really feel like I'm being hard on the guy, and he did a lot of stuff I really loved if I don't go back and examine it too closely, but now you just put that thing in my head about the fetishes. Thanks for ruining that for me, Chris.
And he also loves Australia. That's a comic book joke.
I will say that I read an interview with him while procrastinating on reading this book. He does come across as a pretty reasonable guy. So I think there's no reason to dislike him. There are 452 pages of reasons to dislike his novel writing career that I'm familiar with.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair.
I'd buy him a beer. I wouldn't want to listen to his audiobook.
Tricia, how can people stay in touch with you on the internet if they are so inclined?
Oh, gosh. As I'm sure they will be. I am on Twitter as MILF Parade. All one word.
Best name.
For all those people who think the word MILF is funny and like the band Wolf Parade, I'm there for you. I occasionally, I really usually just tweet when Best Show is on, but sometimes I try to be funny. You're welcome to try to follow me. I'm sorry I talk about my dog a lot. That's just going to be what's like. Sorry.
That's cool, though. Dogs are awesome. Or to quote Millhouse, dogs are outstanding.
Dogs, the best show. Yeah, I don't see how you're ever going to get anywhere on the internet.
Yeah, nobody
with
likes
a combination
these things.
like that. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming out and talking about this horrible book with us. I know the Pope is visiting you guys tomorrow, so you probably got a lot of planning to do.
I have a lot of cleaning to do.
Oh, wow, he's going to visit you.
Oh,
that's
yeah,
amazing.
he's coming to everyone's house in Philly, I think. That's why none of us can go anywhere tomorrow.
I hope you've laid in a thick supply of tasty cakes.
Tasty cakes. Nice.
They are tasty and they are cakes. And don't knock them, man. They're much better than any other regional snack cake you might have.
Oh, we're going to go toe-to-toe on this because I'm from the land of It's It.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Like, we'll
anyway, this is for a different show. Snack Wars coming soon.
I'll throw down on Snack Wars.
Well, thanks again for coming, for being on the show, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it. This was fun, aside from the parts that were horrible.
Yeah, except for the reading the book part. It was awesome. All right, we will talk to you later.
A, letter B, letter C, letter D, letter E, letter F, letter G, letter, got a lot of letters.
Yes, and now we're going to read some letters.
We are going to read some letters.
And respond to them.
And respond to them. So the first letter is from Rachel, no last name, and it is entitled F in the A, which I was very hesitant to open until I realized that we had done a recent episode that corresponded closely with it. And it goes like this. You just need to know that Flowers in the Attic was, quite literally, the novel that ruined my life.
Oh.
I read it in high school. I'm now in my late 30s, and I still refuse to read any fiction written after the Second World War. The part where he urinates on her tarred hair to try to get the tar out scarred me for life, and I cannot believe that it wasn't someone's fave. Anyway, thanks for addressing this scourge on society.
I can't believe that none of us mentioned that either in retrospect. I had managed to forget that happened, but...
I think I didn't mention it because I honestly think I probably just skipped that passage because that scene was a little much. Mm-hmm. So,
but yeah, thank you for writing. I agree with your opinion about that book. It didn't ruin my life because I'm older now, but it definitely ruined my week.
It did, and I think we can both support you in your decision not to read anything written after World War II.
It's all bad, isn't it?
It's not all bad, but you're just safer. You're not necessarily going to read a better book because you're sticking to pre-World War II, but you're almost certainly not going to have to read a thing where somebody pees on somebody's hair.
That's true, but please nobody at home take this seriously. We are joking. Although I do have a handlebar mustache of which I wax the tips. Also not true.
The second one is from Val, no last name, who describes herself as Valerie from the internet, which is good because that means it's not likely to be my girlfriend's mother, Valerie.
Yeah.
And this one is just a little bit of ego stroking. It goes like this. Anyway, I love the show. I love the addition of a co-host. Props to me. Thank you.
Good job.
And I especially love that your show helps me avoid the possibility of reading bad books. I do have to say, every time I hear Chris Collision do a dramatic reading, I find myself wondering what it would sound like if he were to do Gibby Haynes' spoken word intro from Jesus Built My Hot Rod. And I read that first because it's a very nice thing to say about me and about us, and we both thank you. And second, it's like you knew me when I was 15 because I couldn't stop doing that.
So are you going to do it?
Maybe a little later. That may find its way into the post-show experience.
Make sure to subscribe to the network for behind the scenes. No, we don't do any of that. It's cool.
But yeah, or I'll just put it up on my personal site, and you can have the worst ringtone in history. Anyway.
No.
Anyway, thank you.
You can't get worse than my ringtone. It's Dolph Ziggler's music. All right. Anyway, that's not a joke.
It carefully indicates the middle of the show. Bam!
Nice.
Owned, mid-Carter. Okay, and so this last letter is from Andrew, no last name, or according to his email sig, ironic twist.
Oh, man. I love those kind of twists.
Yeah. And he just says this. Love the podcast a lot, and I have a couple questions for you, as well as a story. First, the story. Me and some writer friends were staying at another friend's Airbnb in Boston. The day we were scheduled to leave, we were in town looking through an open-air bookstore when I spotted a copy of, you guessed it, Wild Animus.
I knew where this was going as soon as I heard open-air bookstore.
So, to repay our friend's generous hospitality, one of us bought the book for $2 and hid it in his Airbnb, thereby passing on the curse of the ram's phallus to another host. We were hoping another guest would eventually find it before he did. Let's pause for a second. This is now the official game. I don't even know what
I was just going to say, can we make this a thing? Like,
please.
This has to be a thing. I know our reach is limited in the grand scheme of things, but even if just, 20 or 30 people hear this and just start randomly leaving copies of Wild Animus in weird places.
I cannot stress this enough. If you see a used copy of Wild Animus, please buy it and leave it at your friend's house.
Yes, but you have to hide it. You can't just leave it on a coffee table. You have to put it someplace weird where when he finds it, he'll be like, how did this get here?
Put it under the toilet. Or in the bathroom. Anyway, just put it somewhere unexpected. Hide it under the guest bed mattress.
Yeah. If he has luggage, maybe just put it in the luggage in a complicated inner flap that he won't discover until he's at an airport and has to explain the weird ram sex book.
Exactly. Okay, so he had a couple of questions for us. So please be prepared. 1. Have you ever started reading a bad book for a future podcast episode, thought, this book isn't bad enough to be funny, and had to resort to a backup plan book?
Yes. It happened before we were a duo. It's actually a whole episode I think may even exist and have not been released because it's happened twice where I've recorded with guests who were friends of mine, and it became clear about half an hour in that there just wasn't enough to talk about. And luckily, since then, I think we've been a lot better, and this was definitely kind of at the early days. But there's a couple people we do need to invite back on the show, actually, as a result of this, because there were some books that just, they couldn't sustain the discussion, So, yeah, it's happened, for sure.
Wow. Any names of books, or do we want to keep that?
Yeah, actually, I'll mention one of the books is called The Texas-Israeli War, which was...
I'm sorry, the what now?
The Texas-Israeli War, which was a book written in the 1970s in this kind of this was at the time period when hippies were really interested in Judaism. And so it was kind of this political satire / men's adventure kind of thing about a team of and this sounds so much more interesting than it is. But it's basically a tank squadron of Hasidic Jews who are fighting against a corrupt capitalist government in America. And it sounds like it would be super funny, but it's not. It was horrible. It was boring. It was vaguely racist in a lot of uncomfortable ways, not in the intended ways. So yeah, that was an instance of, definitely going to need to invite that guest back at some point in the future, because we had a really good discussion. There just wasn't anything to really be said that would have been entertaining, as opposed to just like, what the fuck, for half an hour.
That is amazing, because just based on your description, I literally cannot imagine that book being boring.
Oh, it was boring.
That, I think, is a better illustration of how bad a bad book can be than almost anything else I can imagine.
At the time, I don't know if you're familiar with the musical work of Kinky Friedman.
I am familiar with people who have had carnal knowledge of Kinky Friedman.
Well, there you go. Yeah. So for the people at home, Kinky Friedman was and no relation. He was a Jewish country singer from Austin, Texas, who kind of like made a name for himself in the 70s by writing these kind of protest songs that were really heavy on Jewish identity. Like one of his big hits is this satirical song called "They Ain't Making Jews Like Jesus Anymore," which it's fucking hilarious. It's a great song. But the book felt a lot like a Kinky Friedman riff that was extended into the idea of a dramatic novel, which made it not fun to read. Right. So anyway, to everyone at home, L'chaim.
Okay, last question. If you had to do an IDEO TV pod episode with the author of the book on the podcast with you, which author would it be? Which book would it be? And why? Caveat, it has to be a bad book. You made your bed. Now lie in it. Wow, ironic twist. You're a little harsh there, man.
That was an ironic twist.
Yeah.
At the end. Now it's like a Saw movie.
Yeah. That's a pretty good question. Jay's pointing at me. I've got to say at this point, if I absolutely had to do that, I'm going to say give me a rock memoir. Maybe, I think my favorite of that genre, and we'll probably get to this one of these years, but No One Here Gets Out Alive, written by a failed rock writer and a Doors hanger-on. And I actually really happen to like that Doors hanger-on, so I think it would be fun to hang around and like make fun of his book lightly while chatting with him. Danny, what is listed on the book as Denny Sullivan, but his name is Daniel Sugarman.
Oh, that's different. When I first heard the question, I actually was thinking in terms of things we had talked about before.
Oh, do it already?
So I came to a conclusion, I guess, early before I realized the world of potential open to me. But I would probably say anything that was Blake Crouch was involved in, just because I feel like he probably doesn't give much of a fuck either. And I don't know, like probably smoke a joint, like laugh about how bad a lot of the shit is.
Didn't he beef with us lightly on Twitter?
No, that was Ernest Cline.
Okay, never mind. Sorry.
Who I absolutely... That's the opposite of it.
He can't come over.
Yeah, no, you cannot come over and play, Ernest. I'm sorry.
But Blake Crouch, at least half of us, we cool.
I don't even know what he looks like. I've never even Googled it, but in my imagination, he's just like a debonair kind of suave guy in his mid-30s that doesn't give much of a fuck. He's doing his thing. He's
getting his books out. So if we're going to restrict it to the universe of people that we've done shows on, I think Lee Child is probably about the
That's
same.
Another great example. Yeah,
right.
Just from everything I've read in interviews, it seems like he's aware that what he writes is a little ridiculous, and he's not necessarily taking it personally when people criticize it on those lines.
Yeah, and he's not one of those guys who has like long blog entries and posts about cleaning his guns while thinking about those who disagree with him on message boards.
Who was that?
I can't even remember.
Yeah, we either did a book or we read a book, or talked about reading a book, where the author has a website that had like brass knuckles and guns in the fucking header, and all of his entries were just about how the world can't understand him and shit.
Oh, who was it? It was The Sacred Cow Slaughterhouse. That was the name of the blog.
Well, I think we may have even mentioned this on the show if we talked about that. So if that's the case, astute listeners will know what we're talking about. If not, just Google The Sacred Cow Slaughterhouse and get ready to have your mind blown.
Yeah, and know that guy is not invited.
No.
To the studio.
No, I'm scared of him. My sacred cows should remain unslaughtered. Thank you.
The
So,
Sacred Cow Petting House. That's this house.
oh, all right. So, it's probably time for us to go. Before we do, important news. We are going to be in Minnesota in like 2 weeks.
Yeah. 10 days, 2 weeks, something like that. By the time you listen to this, even closer. It's amazing. The F+, beloved podcast, and definitely fellow travelers of ours in the Bad Pros
Friends of
category.
the family.
Yeah.
So October the 4th, we will be doing a reading with the F+ Live as guests at Grumpy's downtown in Minneapolis. So if you're in the neighborhood, definitely plan on coming out. There's also a little pre-party thing the night before at Sisyphus Brewing in Minneapolis where there's going to be karaoke. And I'm a very good karaoke singer, so make sure to come out and buy me lots of drinks, and I'll just keep getting better.
Keep getting singier.
Yeah.
Come out. There may be some IDO TV Pod t-shirts for lucky attendees. And we're definitely looking forward to seeing a lot of people and saying hi and reading some of the most amazingly awful things that anybody's ever seen anywhere.
Yeah, the most horrific things on the internet will be brought to you live and in person. So make sure to check it out. October the 3rd and 4th in Minneapolis, Minnesota. At Grumpy's Downtown is the show on Sunday, and that's the important one. So, come on out. If you want to keep in touch with us and send us letters and stuff, it's I don't even own a television at gmail.com. We also have a Twitter and a Facebook that are IDEOTV Pod. Those are the things that you put after the slash.
Yep. And the Fun Time Party Pit on Facebook is heating up as we speak. People have finally started arguing with us, and it's delicious.
Yeah, so basically, it's a little group you can join. We're discussing things. Hopefully, as things move forward, we'll be able to kind of use it to organize more in-depth discussions and talk about live events of the future and things like that. So stick around. There's big news in the works eventually.
Yeah.
So
All for you, because we love you.
yes, but thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you next time. This has been I Don't Even Own a Television. Keep reading crap.
Joe